David Brucey here in episode 3 for All. This is 3 Trey Anastasio Licks from 1996, and we're going to be talking about the band Phish. And I've had some requests to feature some Phish and some of Trey's music and ideas, so I thought we could start with some of his licks. And Phish formed in Burlington, Vermont in 1983 and went on to become one of the most popular and influential, jam bands of all time. They've sold over 10 million albums worldwide, and successful tours and festivals and stuff like that. And I think most viewers would agree, the Grateful Dead are the #1 jam band of all time. And then I think Phish I consider #2 as far as popularity and influence and importance. And then maybe 3 would be Widespread Panic or someone like that. But without question, Trey is a great player, a master improviser, scales and these modal flavors and arpeggios and these experimental sounds and chromatic ideas. There's some really cool stuff, hiding in this lesson. So here we go. I have seen Phish in concert once. It was actually in 2003, and I saw him with my friend Liberty Cat. And I wasn't honestly that familiar with Phish's music, before that concert. I knew Bouncing Around the Room, and that was pretty much it. And my friend Liberty was definitely more familiar, and she told me, just go, and it's gonna be fun. So I didn't really know what to expect. And I do remember just standing there and watching the band and really, trying to soak it up and try to really understand Phish. And I'm going to share an image here with like the set list and some of the songs they played. But I watched the whole show, and the last 2 songs, like the encore, were Bouncing Around the Room and Frankenstein. And when they finally made it to the encore, I went through the whole set. I think they did a Stevie Wonder cover, which I didn't even really catch it, when they played it, because it probably sounded more like Phish than Stevie Wonder. But at the end, I went through and watched both sets, and then they had the encore. And when they did Bouncing Around the Room, like they were like glow sticks and beach balls and this crazy lighting, and I got it. Like at that moment, I was like, oh, this is really cool, And then they played Frankenstein, and honestly, they just completely owned Frankenstein. They did such a good cover of that. My jaw was wide open. I was like, oh my gosh, they just nailed, Frankenstein, and that was the end of the show. But that was a killer concert for sure. Phish is awesome live. The licks in this lesson actually came from a bootleg from 1996. It was somewhere in Missouri, I think. And then there are a couple licks from another bootleg from 1992. So I kind of mixed, and matched a few different years. But then there's some really cool ideas. Before anybody leaves a comment or they're confused, I do have the Allman Brothers, live at Fillmore East on the wall there. I don't have any Phish on vinyl. And with the holidays and everything that just hit us, I didn't really have time to go out and seek, Phish vinyl. I'm not even sure if Phish vinyl is rare or hard to find or not, but I have 0, Phish albums in my collection. But definitely the Allman Brothers, even though they're a southern rock band, they also fit that jam band template. First lick's this melodic legato phrase, and we're in D7, and it looks and sounds like this. One more time. D7 basically, and he's basically climbing up this A, B, and C, and he kind of hangs on that C note a couple more times. And you're doing this pull off E to D there on the G string, and then this A to F sharp on the B. Like that. And then pull off A to G right there. And then you hear this kind of back and forth mix and match between, A, F sharp, and then A to G, like this. And we're basically just ending that little legato phrase on a different note each time. Like you're doing that 4 times like this. And the last time just end on that F sharp. Time all the way through this lick. Okay, up next is this blurry melodic phrase, and we're in D minor pentatonic for this, and it's something like this. One more time. So we're basically playing out of the box right there, D minor pentatonic. And he's basically doing this kind of climbing, basically doing this G to A and then this C to D right there. And you're kind of staying on that D note and kind of picking through that. And the last time you're basically doing kind of an abbreviated version of that. It's really simple, but it does kind of catch your attention with that rhythmic, kind of repetitive intensity right there. There's a bonus speed lick that's related to lick number 2, and this is from actually a bootleg from 1992, so it's different footage, but it is related to what we just looked at, and the speed lick's like this. So now we're basically playing out of D major pentatonic, technically. And you could think of that as B minor pentatonic, but we're basically using D as the root. And right there, we're just playing this kind of speed lick. It's just 4 notes. A to B and then that D to E right there. And I've heard all sorts of guitarists play licks like that. Eric Johnson, Paul Gilbert, and here's Trey Anastasio. And it's very simple, but it does catch your attention because you're hearing that repetitive, repeated, rhythmic pulse with that lick, just like the previous example. The next idea is a D major pentatonic speed lick, and it's related to what we just looked at because it also came from that 1992 bootleg, but it's something like this. So we're basically playing D major pentatonic. You can also think of that as B minor pentatonic. That's the relative, major and minor. So that, lick is basically just cruising through, D major pentatonic like this. And you're just playing through that scale position right there. But you're starting on A and ending on that D note right there. And that's a good way to practice scales, just kind of flying right through it, and you're not really technically playing the entire scale, you're leaving the low E string out. So you're just playing a fragment of that scale. But that's a good thing to practice. You could run that through all 5 positions of the minor pentatonic scale if you wanted to. But one more time there. And there's a good amount of legato in there too. I'm really just picking every time I change strings, and then you're doing a hammer-on or a pull-off, like this. And it's very basic, but it sounds great. Here's another bonus lick, and this is a melodic D major arpeggio-based phrase, and Trey is a master at using arpeggios, but it looks and sounds like this. One more time. So we're literally playing out of this D major arpeggio fingering right there. And he's basically grabbing F sharp and hammering on to G. And then you're doing this hammer on pull off and kind of encircling that little D major fingering right there. So you're doing this. And when you then you want to slide from nowhere back into that A, and you're going to do this. One more time. And that's the part where Trey basically steps on the gas right there. And that's tricky. It has a really catchy and kind of ear-catching sound right there. It almost reminds me of an old Van Halen lick, like from Running with the Devil and some of those solos, but Trey kind of put his own, stamp on it like that. One more time, kind of slow through the whole lick. And then one more time up to speed. That's going to wrap this look at 3 Trey Anastasio licks from 1996, and I really admire Trey. I mean, he's a great player, and I really admire his improv kind of approach, where you don't really know what he's going to play until he plays it, and that builds excitement, and interest, where it's like, yeah, what is he going to do? And with certain players or bands, think of bands like Rush or Dream Theater or someone like that, and they recreate their albums live, and live, they sound exactly like the album, but with a band like Phish, they don't do that. They do this kind of freak out, freeform improv kind of thing, which a lot of their ideas are, coming from jazz. So they might take a 4 or 5 minute song and then freak it out and stretch it out and jam it out to where it's 10 or 12 minutes long. And you may not even recognize like parts of the song where it's like, what is this? And then you realize like, oh, it's like an old Beatles song, or this is one of their songs and they've mutated or changed it. And that's really cool, where it's not always the same thing. Like every time you hear it, it might be a little bit different, or the studio version and the live version are completely opposites, And I like that, where you just don't really know what to expect. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to That Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.